Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob?
I mean, then some of you might be like,
Continue.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth.
And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do.
So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking.
Welcome to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. You are tuning in to the 1 year anniversary episode. We did it. We made it 1 whole year of weekly episodes. Oh, man. Man, oh, man. I know from the outside, like, okay, once a week. Great job, Tami. Oh, man. If you could see the behind the scenes that went into that and how many close calls there were to be able to get this podcast produced in time to get out every Tuesday morning. Oh, my goodness. There were some close calls for sure. And there was a lot of tears shed. There was a lot of banging my head against the wall, all the things over this last year. Such a range of emotion, but mostly just joy and happiness and fulfillment and being able to sit down and share my story or the guest story every single week. And really the best part about this is hearing the feedback from all of you. And not that I need the outside validation. We all talked about that on many episodes. But knowing that this podcast has helped people feel seen and heard in their story, knowing that this podcast has helped people start going to get therapy, to start having some of the difficult conversations, to start looking into their own childhood story, to start validating their own story, honoring their inner child, means the absolute world to me. The absolute world to me and to little Tam Tam, because it means that our story and our purpose and mission is creating a little bit of a change. Even though this little ripple is small right now, we know that it's only going to get bigger with all of your help and with the plans that we have to grow the podcast in this next year. And so I just wanted to take time to thank each and every one of you for continuing to press play week after week, for sharing these episodes and getting it out to more people. I'm kind of like a, one-man band over here. So my social media reach only goes so far. And so anytime you share an episode, it could get in front of one person that maybe wouldn't have heard it or seen it otherwise. And so those little actions mean the world to little podcasters like me. So thank you for those of you that do that, or just word of mouth, or share it, or all of those things, or have reached out and be like, hey, you should have so-and-so on as a guest. Those have turned into such beautiful episodes. So thank you so much for that. I also wanted to thank all of you, because even though I do share a lot of my life on this podcast, you've heard some pretty vulnerable stories on here. I've opened up about my separation on this podcast, and I just wanted to thank all of you for holding space for me in that and allowing me to be open and vulnerable with all of you, and how healing that has been for me, because for a long time I wasn't able to share that part of my story. And for someone who preaches validating your story and showing up authentically and all of these things, it was really hard for me to tiptoe around that. And so it's felt very healing and freeing to be able to share really all aspects of my story. And I know that will continue to evolve. And so I hope that by me being open and vulnerable in that way has allowed you to feel safe in looking at yourself and your story in that way as well, and knowing that there's so much beauty to be found in that. So I am just over the moon excited about introducing my guest for the 1 year anniversary special episode. And it was funny because you guys know I like to do things unscripted over here. I often fly by the seat of my pants. I now see that as a strength of mine for the most part, because I kept thinking like, gosh, what do I want to do for this? I don't want to just sit back and have it be a walk down memory lane kind of episode. And I've had my kids on here. So I was like, what else could make this episode really, really special? And all of a sudden it hit me, and I knew exactly who needed to be sitting in this guest chair. And when I reached out, I, no joke, did a happy dance when I got her response. because as you know, this podcast is meant to help people feel seen and heard. And you are about to hear how this woman does this on the daily and has done this for 35 years in her career and beyond. And she's not done yet. But the way that this woman has impacted my life, when I talk about the ways that we can develop childhood wounds, and it's easy to think back to your childhood experience and we go to our parents, but you have heard me talk on this podcast about how it could have just been one comment from a teacher, one comment from a fellow student or a sibling or a coach or something like that, that one comment that stuck with you, and how you could have created a story around that. There's a reason that I remember this woman and how she made me feel so seen way back in 3rd grade. And that's why I invited my 3rd grade teacher to be the guest on my 1-year anniversary special, because this woman holds such a special place in my heart. And I just love that 34 years later, something crazy like that this woman still sees me. This woman had such a profound impact on my life, and that I remember how she made me feel seen and how she made me feel special for being who I was and being able to celebrate all that I was. That's why I decided to wear this bright, bold shirt today, because that's how I used to be back in 3rd grade. I was bold and loud and fun and all of those things, and now I've got the sun coming in on me for those of you that are watching on YouTube. And I was like, I'm just going to embrace it because it feels symbolic in a sense, and that the sun has set on the 1st year of the Tami Talks podcast. And I'm so excited for what is going to come in this next year. And it's people like Miss Saris to me, Heidi, that believed in me from the very beginning, believed in me from the start and saw something in me. And I just encourage you, whether you're a teacher or an educator, we all play a role in people's lives. We all have the ability to make someone feel seen and heard in just the most simple of interactions. The cashier, the waitress, the stranger walking down the sidewalk, the little kid you spot at the park, to just make eye contact and smile. The way that we can help everyone feel seen, heard, and loved. It's such a small act that has such a profound effect. And so I cannot wait for you to hear this episode, because she shared so many intuitive ways that she does this for students, and how this could be changing the trajectory of their lives is so important. And so I hope that every parent listens to this episode. I hope every educator listens to this episode, because there are so many profound nuggets of wisdom in here that can help our little kiddos heal, so that way we are adults who know how to emotionally support ourselves and that next generation. So stay tuned. Before we hop over to that episode, if you would like to support this channel going into year 2, if you found some value in it over this last year, you could absolutely become part of the Tami tribe, which I really hope to grow in this next year, and just having more behind the scenes content, maybe some special merchandise. I just needed to get this thing up and running this first year. And so I'm getting excited about all the ways to expand this podcast in many ways, not just in the Patreon, but also just getting the message out there to more and more people. But if you would like to become part of the Tami tribe, the Patreon link is below, and you can sign up for 2 different levels. There's a $3.33 a month, or $11.11, because you know your girl loves some angel numbers. So if you would like to support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it, and knowing that it is just pouring back into creating these podcasts week after week so they can reach more people. All right. Giddy up. Let's go back in time to my 3rd grade self. All right, everyone. I have my very special guest that I have been teasing the last few weeks. I kept thinking about, what do I want to do to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of this podcast? And so I invited my former 3rd grade teacher on here with me, because you actually play a lot of pivotal roles in my story. And so I probably have mentioned you several times throughout this podcast, and I've talked a lot about the 3rd grade experience. And so I have my former teacher. I think you were also my 7th grade math teacher.
I think we were. Yeah. I think things transitioned. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So I knew you first as Miss Boyer, and then you became Miss Saris. And I have a really hard time just calling you Heidi now. So
That's
I'll just always be Miss Saris to me.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
So
I wanted her to be on here because I'm obviously talking about childhood experiences, and this is a woman that helped me feel seen. And I think back to 3rd grade, and even though that was a time in my life that I remember I associate it with starting to have body dysmorphia and those types of things, but I also remember my classroom experience and being able to be loud and having fun, and you really fostered that. And so you helped me feel seen then. And I've seen the work that you're even doing now with your students, because you're still teaching after how many years?
35 years teaching, and I still love it. I still feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing. So, yeah.
How did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
I think I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, when you're in school, and I liked math. And so, you got to go to school to be an engineer, a woman in engineering. Hated every second of engineering. Started in that. It's like, this is not my gig. And then, I don't know, then they tried to talk me to go into industrial technology. And I was like, this is not my thing either. I think I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but it wasn't prominent, or, you weren't going to make enough or whatever. Be a woman and go into engineering because that looks better. It wasn't my destiny.
Oh,
So
I love that, because I've even heard parents in the locker room sometimes talking about their kids and, they should go to school for this, but their kid really wants to go to school for that. And it's the same thing. It's because it's money and it's status. And they kind of are forgetting that, well, this is what actually lights them up. So you followed that, because look at the kids you've impacted by following.
Yeah. And that's what I feel. I've never been driven by money. And I think my guidance counselor in high school, who was trying to talk me into being that, had every good intention. And, use the stuff you love to do something that's going to make you, kind of groundbreaking. Because back then there weren't a lot of women engineers. As a matter of fact, there were 2 in my class that started and 1 dropped out. And so I think it had every good intention. But luckily, my parents were always, you do what you want to do, that kind of thing. So I never felt trapped in that. Like maybe if it were a tradition of a family to be a doctor or whatever, never felt trapped in that. So
I love that, though, because I think you hit it on the head when you said the best of intentions, because I think a lot of childhood wounds and things like that happen with the best of intentions.
Absolutely.
We want our kids to achieve because we want them to excel. We want them to have the best life, but we don't realize we're putting expectations on them.
Absolutely.
That maybe don't light them up, that maybe aren't who they are.
Yep. And I really feel there's way too big a focus on money and status and that kind of stuff. So I love when that doesn't have to be part of it. So
I'm curious. So because right now you teach what grade?
6th, 7th, and 8th grade math, and 7th and 8th grade health.
So when do you start to see, because obviously you taught me in 3rd grade and you're in the schools, you see all the age ranges. Where do you start to notice kids starting to be more aware of their peers and maybe changing who they are, or that peer pressure?
Years ago, if you'd asked me that, I would have said 6th, 7th grade, maybe. And now with social media, and I don't mean to harp against social media, but it has really created a lot of problems for, we've got 4th graders who are worried because they don't have enough retinol to put on their eyes at night. I'm like, that's not what retinol makeup is for. Exactly.
That's what a 4th grade of combat wrinkles, but
those are happy wrinkles. You earned those. Yeah. So there's a big, how do I want to say? There's been a big change. We didn't see till maybe 6th, 7th grade before. And now they're coming in earlier and earlier with that. Well, I don't have this, so, I need that. Or in $100 bottle of lotion for a kid to put on there for retinol. It's like, you're fine. You don't need that.
Right.
But they feel like they need it because who they see on social media has it. And
oof.
Yeah. So probably about that age, I'd say 4th, 5th grade. It comes up in bits and pieces when they're littler. But for the most part, I would say that that's what I see anyway.
Yeah. And how about within the classroom, when do you start to see changes within how kids behave?
Well, obviously, middle school is a big transition year.
Yeah.
And it's probably, all kids are different, but I think 5th to 6th grade is a big jump. We do a good job at our school of keeping the 5th grade more elementary-like as their transition into the middle school. And so that transition from 5th grade to 6th grade is big. And I know this is going to sound cliche or whatever, but at River Ridge, we've got great kids. And so if you remind them, to be a good kid or be a good person or think of someone else or whatever, they've got a good foundation, and that's really makes it easier. But it's still, it's real and it's there. And it's, I'd say 6th, 7th grade.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking back, it didn't dawn on me until a little while ago, thinking back to middle school, and that 7th grade was when we consolidated. So like middle school was hard enough as it is.
Right.
But then we had combined schools. We had to move to a completely different building. And I remember where math was. I had to go down the little stairs to your room.
Yep.
And it's funny because I don't have a lot of memories. But again, I think that's why you stand out to me, because I do have specific memories of 3rd grade and 7th grade math because of how you helped me feel seen.
Well, and I appreciate you always saying that. I like to look at it more as I still love my students, and I like them to be who they are, but I also like to guide them because I believe some kids don't have the same guidance, or they don't have the same rapport with anybody that's an adult. And so, I don't know, I've just always felt what's right for one kid is not necessarily right for another kid. And I like to try to find their rights and help them through that and let them be who they are. And within the realm of someday they've got to go out into reality as well, and, give them some parameters as far as that goes. But
I think that's where it comes so natural to you to just be able to see these kids and what makes them unique and who they are. But sometimes we try to put them in boxes, or we assume that, everyone has a normal childhood, like her household when they go home, and not everybody does.
Nope, they do not. And the differences in households, I mean, it's huge. I don't even understand how some kids can follow their where they're going this night, that night. Grandma picks them up, dad picks them up, mom picks them up, babysitter picks them up. 5 days a week, it's somewhere different that they're going. And they're loved. Don't get me wrong, they're loved. But it's a lot, particularly for, I think, the confusion of middle school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I talk a lot about energy and blocks and all those things, but even that sense of instability, hopefully, again, if there is love there and support there, kids can work through those transitions. But that sense of instability can really throw off a kid in being able to then truly connect with their environment, feel safe within their environment, flourish in their environment, and just feel really grounded in it. So I was actually listening back to one of the episodes, I think it was called Control versus Surrender. And I was talking about my 5th grade experience with Miss Erickson when I peed my pants in front of her. Practice my band lesson. And I froze. Yeah, absolutely. I froze. I'm like, this is a classic experience of fight, flight, or freeze. And I froze because I was so embarrassed that I didn't practice, because she was strict.
Yes, she was.
But we were a really good band.
You had a really good band, yep.
But I will never forget that moment of just absolutely freezing and losing all bodily function. And it just took off sprinting. But now, understanding things a little bit more, I can understand maybe what was going on at home that would have kept me distracted or not doing the things that I maybe should have been doing. And so how do you work with that when there's kids have homework and they're not bringing it in, or they're not getting their things done? How can you meet them in that, knowing that it's probably not just a lack of motivation or that they're being lazy or something like that?
Well, this to me is got layers to it.
Yes.
So first of all, when a kid doesn't have their homework done, they feel the worst about it of anybody. Even if they're the kid that goes, I didn't do it again, or I'm not. That's a lot of times not what they're really feeling. That's what they're saying to protect themselves or whatever. I don't know the exact word, save face, whatever.
Yeah.
And I know there will people be out there that will argue with me on this, that I keep them in at recess, and I don't view that as a punishment. I don't necessarily, and I know that sounds like, she keeps them in at recess. I'll say to them, well, why don't you come in at recess today and we'll get that done? Because I've found that's what they really want, is where can I get this done?
Yes.
What can I do? And I just, when they're done, they throw it on my desk, and I'm always in there. I don't go to the lounge or whatever. I talk too much with my hands, obviously.
Get it.
Right. And I just really believe that time is time that some of these kids just need. And it's not, I don't view it as a punishment. And I had probably one of the kids who came from one of the toughest families that I've ever worked with. 2 years ago, I kept him in my room during a student staff basketball game. And several other kids wanted me to play. And I'm terrible, but that's what why they wanted me to play, so that they could score on me. Right. And I kept him in. And at the end of the thing, he said, thanks, Mrs. Saris. I know that you could have had more fun in the gym with the other kids, but I got 5 assignments done in that time. Now, outwardly to some parents, it looks like she's punishing that kid. In my heart, I'm not. And I really, truly believe that some of those kids, that's what they need. They don't have anything at home. And math is hard.
Yeah.
They don't have anybody that can help them.
Yeah.
So when I say, all right, I'll see you at recess, it's not a, I'm so mad at you, you're staying in at recess because you didn't get done.
I want to help you.
And if a kid gets a progress report back and they've got 6 zeros on it because they haven't turned anything in, that's stressful to a kid. And I really believe getting those off of there, getting those out of there, giving them that 25 minutes or whatever it might be, it sometimes only takes them 10, 12 minutes if they come in there and I can catch their little glitch.
Yeah.
And then they're off and running and it's done and it's turned in. So that's what I see. Not everyone sees it that way. And some people do use it as a punishment, but it does not feel, I don't view it that way. That's not my interpretation of it. I really believe at first maybe the kids feel like that, but I think as they transition through, they're like, or they'll even sometimes say to me, I'm coming at recess to finish this because I'm not done yet.
Ooh,
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've learned that. I've got one boy in 8th grade right now who just said, I just wish I could spend every recess in here with you. He doesn't like to go to recess. And I feel it's important that he does that as well. So I always tell him, well, if you're struggling on your assignment, you can stay in. If it's just to avoid being around other kids, then that you got to go in there and work through that too. But I don't view that. I view that as a way to help the kids. I really do, because I know that some of them go home and it's usually the ones that aren't done, go home and don't have any stability or whatever. And I'm not saying that there aren't some teachers who use it and it's a quote punishment or whatever, but that's not how I view it. Hopefully have gotten it in their heads that it's not that. And sometimes the kids will say, I just really don't get this, but I got this or that, or I've got a band lesson or whatever. Can I come here? Sure, if you can come in a different time. But that's when I find that the kids, because kids don't like to have those zeros on there. They don't like to have, and if in reality, most of the kids who have a zero have several zeros if you let it get to that point.
Right.
And so I just feel that letting them come in there, get that extra help. I don't know. That's
Huge. It's so huge. Like,
Yeah.
just over here.
yeah. But there are parents who say they need their recess. And I'm not saying they don't. But I also know that some of them stress about those zeros, because some of them will come in my room and they'll say, can I stay in here and work on this? I didn't have my English done, or I didn't have my writing done, or it has nothing to do with my classes, but they just need that
Safe
space. Yeah.
I mean, and it's just hearing you talk about it, it's your energy around it.
Yeah.
Even though you don't have to even say this isn't punishment, it's just your energy. It's nurturing. Like, here, I can help you through it. And obviously, if they're coming in there and voluntarily, they're picking up.
Yes.
And they realize, like, no, this is actually a safe space. And I think initially it could be seen as that. And maybe people do view that. But if they hear you talk about
it, doesn't take very long. Usually like 6th grade when I first started on it. And I'm not going to lie. Some of our discipline is if they get in trouble, if they're naughty at recess or whatever, they have to miss a recess for our administration and, whatever. But it doesn't take them very long to figure out that as it progresses along, it's just a place they can get this done, get rid of that zero. And I don't like grades, but that's where our society is. And I always stress with the kids, there are kids who work so hard and their best grade is a 71, which in our school is a D. And then there are kids who don't have to work very hard and they're getting 99s. And so I'm not a huge grade person, but it's ingrained in our kids and they want that to be better. So when they get their grade reports and they see, a 0 or a not good score, or can I come in and make corrections? If that's what they need, then that's what hopefully they can get.
It's sending such an important message that I see you. You're worthy of my time and energy and attention. I'm happy to help you. You deserve that. And I just think about, as adults, how many people, myself included, have a hard time asking for help. And when you think to those kids, like, that might be something that you're instilling them in now. Like, hey, if I'm struggling on something, I can ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a lifelong skill that you are teaching those kids, that, hey, if you are struggling, you don't have to struggle alone. There are people out there that will help you and support you. And so
I hope so. I hope that's
healing generations of that for people, because I see that all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wow. There's so many levels of that. But again, I think that's, again, how you see them, and that this is actually important to them. This isn't about that they don't care. It's that they just need a safe space and someone to guide them and support them through that.
It absolutely is. And again, I don't question very often that our kids are loved. We have great kids that are very, very loved. And I talk about this in health class. Love just shows up in so many different ways that they just, this little pocket that needs this extra time, their parents can't help them. Their parents aren't home because they're working a third job, whatever. And then that makes them feel bad because they've got that missed assignment. And so I try to, that's how I approach it. And it might be right, might be wrong. I don't know. I hope it's right. So I feel it's right. So that's what I do. So
it's interesting because sometimes like 35 years in, you can be like stuck in old ways, but it seems like you've really morphed with kids and learned how to pick up on those cues and read their energy and just intuitively know when someone might need an extra helping hand.
You know,
are trying.
Yeah. Teaching health class is really, it's such a great, I don't know, anti-math. It's, math is, this is the right answer. This is how you do it. This is how you get there. And health is so much different than that. And we talk about what your emotions are, how you handle your emotions, how you deal with all of those things. So it plays so nicely together that, I think it's really good for the kids. Right now, I think, one of the reasons, first of all, congratulations on your first year.
Thank you.
But one of the reasons I brought you your papers, because the first anniversary is the paper anniversary,
papers,
yes, to write her stuff on, is because I truly believe we have happiness lists in my classroom. And when these kids are struggling or need something, I tell them, do something on there. It can be shoot baskets. It can be listen to music. Anything that you can do right now. They don't know how to use those. Right. So they'll come into my room sometimes and they'll be upset about something. Just happened this week. And this boy was really struggling. And I said, did you get your happiness list out? And he goes, forgot about that. And so even though they have these tools, they got to learn how to use them and how they're going to help them. But it's really funny. I've been to high school graduation parties where their lists are one of the things that they display out there on there. So those kinds of things play nicely with math, which is really hard. And let's face it, not every kid really understands math. And it can be a really big struggle. And I feel for those kids. I understand that it's not easy for them. And so a lot of times I try to draw off that, not everyone can run a 4-minute mile.
Right.
That doesn't mean I'm not working really hard to get the best mile race in I can get. And so health and math, in my case, have really been good.
And for anyone that has been listening throughout this last year, I have talked about kind of creating a fire drill of the things that can help you emotionally regulate or the things that bring you joy. And it is going to, I can't just go out and paddleboard, especially now, right, in the dead of winter. But that is something, if I have time and it's nice out, I can do that and I can go out and clear my energy and feel joy from that. But if I have 5 minutes before I got to get my you-know-what together and I got to shift my energy and tap into some joy, I got to press record on this podcast, what can I do in that moment?
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of having this list of the things that bring you joy, the things that can help shift your energy. And sometimes it could just be going outside and getting a big breath of fresh air.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about that, we call it our happiness list, is, and I always get River Falls and Stout mixed up. I can't remember. One of those two schools.
Stout.
I think it might be Stout. What city is Stout in?
Monopoly.
And that was River Falls then. And there's a professor there that uses a happiness box because one of the kids that went there from our school, they had to take a class and they were talking about stuff. And this professor called and she's like, can you tell me about this happiness list? I'm like, it's the simplest thing in the world. You create a list and it's fluid, because when you're in 7th grade, the things that you enjoy are not exactly the same as when you're a senior in high school. And I tried doing a happiness box with the kids one time. They're just a little too young in 7th grade to have a picture of grandma if that's what you need to draw off of, or some perfume or whatever. And so anyway, because that's what I had gone to a conference and learned about. And so I morphed that into this happiness list. And I had a student go to college and then this professor called and she's like, I just love to use that. Can I? I'm like, well, it's a piece of paper and a pencil. I certainly didn't patent it or anything, just write that down. So I loved that this was the paper one because I really think, you've got that. You can frame it, you can put it wherever you want. But I have a lot of belief in that. I did that with my own kids. You're also just go for a run, go for because as the mom, I knew what they liked to do. Go fishing, go do something. We'll work on this later to give them that guidance into how to calm themselves down or how to get out of that funk or how to,
Yeah.
because you do have to learn that and I tell my students this all the time, every one of you had 10 to 15 things on that happiness list that you wrote down yourself and shared with the class, but they don't know to go to that. They don't know to. So yeah, that's where we are.
Probably the majority of adults as well. Like, we have lost sight of the things that make us happy and that brought us joy because we've got a million things on our to-do list and we got to go to work and we got to take the kids here and we got to do this and we got to do that. And we completely disconnect from our inner child and the things that brought us joy. So I love that you are creating this list now with these kids, because I hope that they keep it as an adult, because so many of the adults that I've been working with is trying to help them remember what they used to love to do.
Well, and I think they feel guilty if they take 20 minutes to go shoot baskets when they could be doing thus and so and laundry and everything. I really do. I really do think it is that, that even if they did remember what brought them a lot of happiness, it's, I shouldn't be doing that right now. I've got this to do, this to do, this to do. When in reality, I believe, if you take care of yourself, and I'm not saying, to totally ignore everything that your responsibilities as a parent or wife or whatever, but you certainly benefit from taking that
yourself from the triggered environment or the situation or the emotion, and to be able to step away from it, regulate yourself. You come back much more focused. You come back much more clear. You come back much more energetic.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. We try to be like, I just got to, and you just stay in this frustration and you're beating your head against a wall or you're staring at your computer screen, when really, if you would have gotten up and just walked outside for those 5 minutes.
Yep. Got some fresh air, moved around, got those energies flowing again. We were just in health class this Thursday. We were talking about defense mechanisms. And I said, get that, because as I read through them, the kids are like, oh, yeah, because when I get really mad, I'm mad at my cat, or what, I'm mad at my dog. And I'm like, and they feel that too. Or your little brother or your little sister, or you come storming in because you didn't do well on something and now you're yelling at mom, and then mom gets defensive. And I'm like, all these defense mechanisms are playing out. I'm like, you can really reduce that by just doing something that you really enjoy. And even if it's 15 minutes, picking something off of that list. And when we build it, the kids get to share. And a lot of the kids will be like, oh, I like that too. And, so as the other kids are reading it, it's really a fun activity. And now it's just the process of bringing it back to them. And when kids come in and need something, I'll say, did you grab your list? I've had kids say things like, I went to visit my grandma at the nursing home and they had a coloring book there. And I said, Grandma, you can color for this or that. And so it does register sometimes with them. It's just not a natural go-to.
But you're even giving them a place to practice that and reminding them. And I think that's where, and it's taken me a long time as well, because I used to do the same thing. Like, I got to get back to work, or no, just stop, do the thing, and then come back to it. But it takes intentional effort.
It does.
To be able to say, no, I need to step away from this because I'm not getting anywhere right now.
Yep, absolutely.
It becomes like analysis paralysis, and you're just stuck there. Just step away.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it too. It's really good.
When did you guys start teaching things like that, like emotions and emotional regulation, whether they call it that or not? But
I'm trying to remember how that worked when we consolidated.
Yeah, 'cause I don't remember getting those taught.
Yeah. I think I was 8th grade health at that time. I can't remember 100%. But when I was 8th grade health, that's all, like reproduction, human growth and development, alcohol and drug abuse, that kind of stuff. And it still is. Our curriculum hasn't changed immensely. I mean, as far as what's required grade-wise, I don't remember what we did in 7th grade at that time. I don't think it was me, but I've been doing 7th grade health now for many years, probably 20 years. For a while I had to teach reading for a while. Not my thing. I was like, oh my God, I hope to God these kids can read when I get out here. Thank God they came to me in 8th grade. Most of them can already read. That's not my niche. So I know I did that. And I don't think I had 7th grade till maybe 3 or 4 years into it. And then I had all the 7th grade. Then I've had all the health since.
Gotcha.
So,
before we go too far, I almost forgot when you were talking about the list and those types of things that I had found my bricks. Right? Do you remember what these?
Yes, I do. Do you remember what you got them specifically for? I should have written them on the back and I didn't. Oh, that's hilarious.
This is got my name on there. Tami Langmeyer.
That's some darn good penmanship I had.
You really did. Oh, it's on the wall.
Yes. I want to say, did Mr. Carlson start this initiative or something? I can't remember who started it. Maybe one of our principals did. But yeah, that's awesome.
So was it doing something good? I mean, even
Yeah.
I remember.
It was. Yep. But brick by brick, if you got caught doing something good or you were kind or,
Yeah.
Yeah. It was called the Power of Positive Students.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? POPs?
I did not remember that, but
Yeah. And
two of them.
anything that they did positive, yeah, it was supposed to be beyond what was expected. So like if you were just walking down the hall and pick something up, that, you're expected to do that.
Right.
But if you did something beyond that, then you got a brick.
Huh. Look at that.
Look at that. That's so cute. I didn't know anybody still had those.
Oh, yeah. And I've talked a lot about my third grade.
Isn't she cute?
My old third grade picture. Oop, there we go. And I've shared this story on here many times, that how on the back it says, make sure you let everyone see me. And the whole story and the reason I found that was because you asked me to come back and speak at the middle school. I think that was in 2023.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here on this couch like, oh, you should go try to find that picture. I'm like, it's not going to be here because I just moved into the apartment, barely had anything here. I had a tiny stack of pictures. I'm like, there's no way it's in that. And then my intuition was like, go look, go check. Fine. So I throw my blanket up. I go on my little drawer over there and I find it and I see that and then I flip it over and I messaged you and was like,
It's awesome. It was really awesome. I loved it.
It was such a full circle moment. And that was to even go back there and speak and to see the work that you guys are doing with these kids and helping them tap into their emotion. It warms my heart and it meant the world to me to go back and speak.
We were so happy to have you too. I still have your little, I took 2 mirrors. She gave us one. I stole one. And I have them still on my desk and the kids still pick them up when they're standing at my desk talking to me, looking at them. And yeah, so it's good. It's anything you can do to give these kids a taste of things that aren't maybe our little corner of Southwest Wisconsin, those kinds of things. And get to see people like you that grew up there that, moved away and did things. And all that stuff is good stuff. There's such a diversity in the world. And I just think our kids need to see bits and even if it's not their thing, they get to see, this is what someone else believes. This is what someone else does. This is how someone else gets through. And yeah.
Awesome. I had read, maybe I just heard it on something. It was a book that I was listening to. I think it was Your Future Self Now. And it was talking about how these teachers got a list of students who were told were gifted. And by the end of the school year, these kids had excelled. Well, it turns out they weren't. But it was just how they were perceived and then how they were treated and all of that kind of stuff. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that because I'm sure in your classroom you see a variety of talents, and whether it's teachers that are listening or parents that are listening, of how to just show up for everybody in the same way, but offering a little bit of what they each need and showing that unconditional love. 'Cause I think that's where across the board it can be the same.
Yep, absolutely. I have a rule in my room and they don't follow it, but you can't say I can't do this, because I always say, yes, you can. You have a little more trouble doing it, but you can do it. Your niece, Ava, we love you, but she's famous for that. I know I can do this, but I know. And it's true. There's so many different levels of what you can and can't do, especially mathematically. Math is 10 miles wide and an inch deep with all these different concepts that they have. And then as they get older, each one has a more specialized focus. So if you're really great at geometry and you go into, construction or whatever, you can focus on that more than, literally kindergarten through 8th grade is, let's see how many concepts we can throw at them and, dig an inch deep, which we try to dig deeper, but it's a lot. Yeah. Anyway, but in health class, I talked to the kids about how easy it is to be negative, and there's research that shows it takes 15 to 20 positives to negate that one negative that you tell yourself in your brain. So when they come back to my desk, I always say, they're like, I can't do this. Yes, you can do this. You're just having some trouble. Okay, I can, but I need your help because I'm really not doing it. But that mindset makes such a big, big difference. And like you were saying, my guess is if the kids were told that too, and the teachers were told that, they had that mindset that I'm smart, I'm gifted. The teachers think I'm smart and gifted, and here I go. And
yeah, I mean, it's just having someone believe in you, someone encourage you, and even tell you, like, it's okay that it might be harder for you.
absolutely.
It doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yep, absolutely.
I just think about how many kids' lives changed trajectory because of a simple message.
Yep.
And I talk about that on my intro, the whole dog thing. And I'm very grateful for that now to realize it's something bigger that I've needed to work through of my own issue of being seen and valuing myself and being in this spot and having this podcast. Like, it was just a comment, but you can tell like how that stuck with me
absolutely.
like these years. And it just, I kept finding ways to replay that in other people or until I felt worthy of being seen. It kept replaying in relationships or careers or all of those things. And so
true.
But you can have like that one person that like, just gets it and sees you and believes in you and says, no, you can. Like, what?
Yeah. And it's sometimes you're the only one that does. They don't believe it. You know, they really think it's too hard. And like we talk about how I know our kids' parents love them. I really do. But they get some false messages, especially with math. Like, I'm like, no, my mom said that she could never do this math either. But I know your mom because I'm really old and I taught her too. And she worked really hard at it. It was not easy for your mom, but you can work that hard and be better at your math than you were, you know, those kinds of things. And I love that to a certain degree because every year Shane Spurley, our Phi Ed teacher, he has to do I can't remember what they called, like they do those where they run and they do V-sits and they... Yeah. I don't know if they call that the same thing anymore, but that's the same concept. And, you know, he gets those kids out on the track and they're running and, you know, they'll all of a sudden they'll be so proud of Johnny, who last year walked all 4 laps. And now this year he ran 2, he walked, then he ran, then he walked, you know, and I'm like, you guys, this is what I'm talking about. You're so proud of Johnny. Be that for yourself. But that's hard. When it's for somebody else, they're better at it.
So hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I love that. But that's one of my favorite days because first of all, they hate the run. They hate the mile, you know. There's few kids that like it. But then they're so good when kids do their very best out there. They just, their best shines through when they come in. They're like, guess what, Mrs. Sarah, so-and-so did this, or they walked a whole lap, you know. So I love that. I love seeing that. It's one of my favorites.
That is amazing. Well, and it's really Inner Child Work 101 is that our inner child wants us to be that cheerleader for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, yeah, you did awesome too.
Yeah.
Did you see how you progressed from last year? But when we don't give it to ourselves, it's when it feels like we're abandoning ourselves.
Yep, absolutely.
So how can you give that same kind of love and encouragement and belief into yourself?
Yep. Yeah. So I really do like it because it's almost a trigger then because they know I'll say, well, how did you do? And stuff like that. Yeah. So.
Like you've been trained in Inner Child 101.
Let me tell you, there are days when I do not do such a good job, but I do try to evaluate myself.
Oh, yourself. I
absolutely do.
I tell Ari and Arla sometimes, like, you know what? I just need to take a moment because if I react in this moment, it is not going to benefit anybody here. So I'm just going to take a moment. I'm going to regulate myself, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. And as teachers, as parents, and even to notice that in yourself as a student that you're watching is like, oh, I am feeling triggered in this friend conversation. I should maybe just remove myself.
Absolutely. And what I tell the kids too, and I do this, like if I screw up, which I do, I'll say, you know, I'll pull the kid aside and I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. I didn't understand exactly what you were saying and blah, blah, blah. That's so important.
So,
but that's really hard for me and it's really hard for kids too. I had a great experience this week where we were talking about grief and the stages of grief and how everyone goes through those stages differently. And it's okay that, you know, you don't look the same in grief that I look in grief and whatnot. And we had a young girl who shared the grief of losing her dad. And she shared how hard it was that kids teased her and picked on her about that, not having a dad. And without being told to whatsoever, one of the boys in the class who was a fringer, I wouldn't say he was the worst about picking her, but a fringer. And I didn't know this. This was when they were younger that it happened. He sent the nicest thing, supporting her and telling her how brave she was. It's good to see those kids, because we forget they are kids and they have to learn and sometimes they have to go through things like that, just like we do, to understand how really important it is to come out on that other side and learn, hey, you can make things better.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and I've said that on the podcast a million times. It's not necessarily the specific event that creates the trauma. It's the emotional support or lack thereof.
Sure.
So
Yep.
for this kid to come back and say that to her, that's so healing for
It is.
him and for her.
Yep.
Because he could easily carry that into his adult life.
Yep.
And so could she. That always remember those things. And what a beautiful way for her to validate her story and her experience and letting other kids see her in that and show empathy.
Well, and I told her that the day she shared it, I told her, you're so brave and that was so awesome to do that and whatnot. And really, I would have never had to have known but she came in the next morning and she said, Mrs. Hurst, look at this. And I said, well, how'd that make you feel? And she goes, really good. She goes, he wasn't the worst one. She goes, but it makes me feel really good that he knows and understands more. And I said, yep. And that's what we have to realize too, that, in the moment, especially with kids, there's such a difference between a 6th grade brain and an 8th grade brain and a freshman brain, understanding all those things and a senior brain. And, you're just hoping that they learn and pick up those things. And I remember Mr. Cooper, my superintendent, I was my first 2 or 3 weeks of teaching. I was a mess and I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it. And he was friends with the superintendent at West Grant, and he came to visit me. And the second he stood in the door, I started bawling. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to not. So he said, get out here in the hall. And so I went out in the hall by him, and I'm like, I can't do this. They're not all getting A's. And he's like, you got to remember, your job is to make a good citizen. When they walk across that stage as a senior, you think to yourself, they're going to make a darn good citizen. They're going to contribute to society and be a really good person. He said, because can you change your own tires? And I said, no. And he said, see, we need everybody. We don't just need people who can get straight A's in classes. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's been in my head the whole time that I've taught.
Powerful.
It was powerful.
Able to scan out. It isn't just about this 7th grade or 8th grade experience.
Correct.
Zoom out.
Yep.
What is this going to teach them for their life skills, for their human skills, their emotional skills?
Absolutely. And what it gave me is it gave me the freedom to go, I don't have to push every kid to get every single thing right. And because that's in my head what I had to do. I had to teach you so well that you didn't get anything wrong ever. That was what I thought, that initial thing. I was doing something wrong if everybody didn't get everything just right. And then I was like, that's right. I can't change my own tire. I can't change my own oil. I can't fix my furnace. We need everybody, and we need those skill sets. And just because somebody's not really good at math or really good at social studies they're going to find their niche if they're a good person. Right. And that's what we needed to. And that's what he told me. And I've never forgotten it. And I needed that day where he stood in my door and said, how's it going? And I started bawling. Like, not good.
It's 2 examples, though, of sharing your truth allowed you to receive a gift.
Yep.
And same thing with that girl. By her validating her story, sharing her story, she was able to receive that gift back. Yep. And I think sometimes we hide in that. If you would have put on the brave face and never said anything, you wouldn't have received that gift, which then has blessed hundreds of thousands of students.
Well, I hope so. But again, I think it was because of who said it to me. I think if Mr. Heidenreich, who was a very good superintendent, he was nice to me and stuff, but I didn't know him. Yeah. I knew Mr. Cooper my entire life. I grew up there. And so it was a comfort when he came to my door, and it was this comfortable release of like, everybody here that had been asking me, I was trying to be really brave. No, I'm doing really good. It's awesome. I was in a split classroom, and I had no idea what a split classroom was when I took the job. So I was like, I'm teaching 2 classes at once, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
wow.
But it all works out. So, but I to this minute, and I can tell you that I've had lots of student teachers in my life, and I've told them that story because I think it's one of the most impactful things that ever happened in my educational career, realizing that my job is to make you on your journey the best person you can be. Yeah, I need to interject a lot of math and a lot of this other stuff, but really, if you can be a really good quality person and find that and do these other things well, have a good work ethic, those kinds of things, you're going to be just fine.
Well, I love how you're doing that through math. And just because you're not good at this doesn't mean that you're a failure, doesn't mean that you're not worthy. You're still sending that message. This is hard, but you've got this. And it's so much of what you're doing. I just feel like there is hope for our kids, but we're not all going to have all, because those are what I refer to as little small T traumas. Some of the kids, like you said, they're going home to some big stuff. And that's hard. And that adds a whole other layer of why they're not coming in focused, or why they're, hungry, or their clothes are dirty, or all of these things. There's a lot of stuff that people don't see and don't understand. But when you're helping other kids learn about empathy, and that you don't know everybody's story. And that's kind of what I was sharing that day when I came back and talking, is everyone here has got a story that even your best friend may not know about what's going on with you. And if we can just have that perspective, and I try to share that with Aria too, when she comes home, she's in 5th grade, and she's spilling the tea. I always tell her, like, you can unload on me, say what you need to say, but we always end it with, why do you think that is? Why do you think that kid might have said that? And she can very quickly say it's probably because X, Y, and Z is happening at home. And just whether or not that's true, for her to have that sense of compassion for, she'll come in all ego and hot-headed about it, like, I can't believe, but then we get down to it where she can then have an understanding and love and compassion for that person regardless, and not attach the story to her, and that, they said this about me, or which I think is also huge. It's
very huge. Middle school especially, it's, and she's just getting started in that 5th grade, 6th grade stuff. It's tough. And, a lot of times the kids who hurt the most are the parents who hurt the most. You know what I'm trying to say? They'll be hurting, and they'll come, I told my mom this happened or whatever, and she said, well, get used to it because that's what I have, or this. And I was like, honey, you don't have to get used to that, but that's where their support is. And again, I don't believe in any way anybody's trying to not be supportive. That's what they know.
Those are that's the toolbox that they have. And there's a whole podcast episode on heal so your kids don't have to, because we end up projecting our stuff onto them. You tell them that story. Well, math was hard for me, so it's going to be hard for you.
Absolutely.
You can be a math prodigy and you never even do it because you put them in a box.
They've already known that that they've thought that, not known. Thought that their whole lives.
And that was what really helped me get a hold of my body dysmorphia and stuff with food, was when I had my daughter. I was like, I will be damned if I pass that stuff down to her, because I'm not healing my things. And she's seen me measure all my food, or seen me pull up my clothes or whatever. Like I have to heal me in order to be that role model for her. And now it's, another layer deep, where I have to learn how to emotionally regulate myself in order to teach them, because I didn't.
And you, from my perspective, you hid things very, very well. You were a happy-go-lucky. And when you were in 3rd grade and stuff, I really believe you were a happy-go-lucky. But even when I would see you again, like in high school at things, dance or whatever, you could tell that it was a bit forced. So you were really good at hiding. And that's one of the things I try to get through to the kids at school too, is you don't have to, if you're feeling like that, like if you're angry, you can be angry. Anger's not a bad emotion. How you react to it might be, and that has to change. You can't punch somebody in the nose and expect to not have repercussions. But you can be angry, and that's okay. And again, get that list out. What can we do? Can you shoot baskets? Does that help you? What'll help you? Do you need to talk to somebody? What would help you? Because you are a pretty good hider.
I want to be an actress.
So this is true.
But no, you're absolutely right. And I look back at that and I think about how much I hid and just wanted to put on the show. Or like, I'll try to, be the happy-go-lucky one so that no one really notices or knows what's going on or doesn't ask questions. And so,
and you can pick that out in kids. There are kids that do that. There are kids that are aggressive because of it. You can kind of see those kinds of things in kids where they need a little extra. I don't know if you'd call it guidance, but a little extra something. To feel comfortable to say, okay, what I really am is really mad at myself because I didn't do this, and that's okay. We were just talking about this in class the other day. So many kids don't think it's okay to be upset with themselves because they've heard, oh, you shouldn't be depressed. You shouldn't be this. You shouldn't be. And being depressed is okay. It's a stage of grief. People get depressed, and that's okay. It's okay for you to be sad. It's okay for you to, but you can't stick in that for years. You have to then find a way, and you can let yourself be sad for a few days. You can let yourself be depressed for a little bit. That's part of life. But we've got to figure out then, what are you going to do if it's becoming a problem? You can be upset at yourself. If you didn't study for your test and you got a bad grade, there's nothing wrong. It's a learning experience to be upset with yourself. But there's so many things that kids hear and believe, like, well, I can't be depressed because that's a mental health problem.
Yeah.
I can't get mad at myself because I'm not supposed to do. And there's all these messages that they get that have some accuracy to them, but aren't completely accurate, so that they need help getting through those.
Well, and I think that's why we have a lot of adults who are walking around with a lot of suppressed emotions. And
Absolutely.
I believe after a while, your body can only take on so much before it starts to show up in physical ailments and diseases and things like that. But what I have found in working with adults is exactly what you said, is we are taught we can only feel this range of emotion, somewhere in that happy range.
Yep.
But can we experience extreme joy? Well, then you're bragging, then you're being the hog. Or if you're way down here, that doesn't feel safe either. The anger or the rage or the grief. We don't know how to feel those safely. And oftentimes it's parents that don't know how to feel comfortable in those emotions. So they don't know how to support their kids in those big emotions. And so it shuts it down, like go to your room or whatever. And actually, Arlo, he was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And I asked him, like, when you have big emotions, like, what can parents do? He's like, just be with them.
Yeah.
Don't leave them.
Another thing that the kids will talk about at school is, and I stress it with them, that I know what their parents are doing. The kids will say, well, my mom lied to me about this when grandpa was sick. And if we're going to just cut to the chase, yes, your mom lied to you. Your grandpa was sick and didn't tell you that, or whatever it might be. You're getting a divorce or you're whatever. Yes, that was a lie. But the behind that was they're trying to protect you, and trying to protect you, you've now developed this, because kids are smart and they have innate senses in things. I've actually had kids say, well, why would my mom lie about this? My dog died 2 days ago and she said it was fine because I had this coming up or that coming up, or she didn't want me to feel that way before the concert. But they knew, and then on top of that, they knew they were lied to. And so that doubles it down. And
You got a betrayal.
yes, exactly. And so, and I tell kids, parents do that with the best of intentions. They really do. And it's just, it becomes a cycle, because once that's happened to a kid so many times, then that's how they think you should deal with it too. And so that's why I think as our adults, we just keep chunking that down.
Well, I can speak very personally to that story, going through my own separation and how am I going to tell my kids this? And the same thing. And I knew, like, I'm doing this work. I know to validate their intuition, but I was protecting myself.
Wasn't ready yet.
In our conversation, because I didn't want to hurt them. Yeah. No, it was because I was uncomfortable in that. And I saw it when I finally was able to say the words. Because again, I mean, we'd even moved here, but I never had said the words to Arlo, like, this is happening. But he thought this was like a cool second place. But there were moments where he would act out real big. And I'm like, he's confused. Yeah. I haven't given him an outlet to express confusion and sadness and all this other stuff. And I will never forget, I was actually back at my parents when I told him very clearly, very directly what was happening, and just to feel the weight and emotion come from him. And we just hugged each other and cried. Like, I denied him that for months, to just be able to be seen in that, and that he was sad and he was confused, but he knew it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because of my own blocks and my own fears.
And sometimes the kids will even say things at school. They'll be like, well, I think my mom thought that this was going to happen or that. And I think what it gives them too sometimes is that feeling that it's not going to be okay, because that's why you're not telling them anything about it.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I've had kids talk about, I literally had a girl, like, I can remember it vividly. She was in 6th grade and her parents were getting divorced, and she knew it. And she was a really smart student, and her grades started going, but she kept holding on to the hope that they were going to get back together. And I had already seen in the paper that they were fully divorced, but they had never addressed it with her either. And one day when she came in, she said, my dad came over to pick us up last night. My mom and dad were really nice to each other, and I think they're going to get back together. And I remember saying to her, honey, they are not getting back together. I saw their divorce finalized in the paper. It was the first time anybody had legit just told her kind of the same thing.
Yep.
And when she was a senior in high school, she brought her invitation to her graduation party down to my room, and she said, I'll never forget that day where you were just blatantly honest with me about my mom and dad getting divorced. She goes, I needed that.
Yes.
And
that happened with Aria.
Mm-hmm.
When I told her I needed to validate your intuition that you were spot on, that things weren't okay, things weren't going to go back to the way they were. And that was my own stuff, but I was denying her that. And so I made sure to say that specifically to her, your intuition was spot on, and I'm sorry I denied you of that. Because I think that's what happened even for me growing up, is when we try to cover those things up, we try to put on the happy face, but the energy around you is telling you otherwise.
Yeah.
As a kid, it's conflicting, right?
Especially since we always tell kids, trust your gut.
Yeah.
If something doesn't seem right, trust your gut. And then they're like,
Nah,
yeah.
You're supposed to trust.
Yeah.
Protecting them. It creates a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we start to disconnect from our intuition, why we don't trust ourselves anymore, why we can't make decisions for ourselves, why we're always seeking outside validation.
Yep.
And so to validate a kid's experience and their intuition is so important. And that's why us adults have to heal our own stuff so we can just be clear and direct and forward. They need that. It might hurt, but you can support them through that. They just need the support around it. It isn't like, yes, mom and dad are separating, but now we can all feel the feeling together. Now you can express, and now I can provide even a more emotional support around it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think they're going to be okay.
I'm sure they will.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. I don't know how long we've been talking, but
I don't either.
it's just about an hour. So that's perfect. But thank you so much. I mean, not even just for the impact that you've had on my life. It just feels like this weird, like, guardian angel thing. And I'm sure there's probably a million other students that feel that way. You're just that teacher that you're going to remember as an adult. And I just can't thank you enough for that, because sometimes it takes one person to see that kid to make a difference in their life.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. But I really believe, too, that in our situation at River Ridge, we've got so many teachers that impact kids so positively that maybe I'm your second, third, whatever impactor, but we've got so many that just care. I'm just so lucky to work with the teachers I work with and the staff, not just teachers. Look at like Tami Hoffman, our secretary. There are kids that's where they go, and she's there for them. And I mean, we've built a community where I'm just really lucky to be part of it. And it's just good. And I'm proud that I did that for you, and I
receive that, please.
And I I want, and I love that, and I'm not afraid to say that I love my students. That's one thing, I do love all of them, but I even love to stand back, because we stand at what we call our T intersection in the morning and jostle around. We greet every kid that comes in. That's intentional. The kids don't think it is. The kids think we're watching them in case they're naughty.
And like, I see you. First thing in the morning, I see you.
Yeah, we greet them in the morning, and I might sing them a little ditty that they think is horrible or whatever. I really do have a beautiful voice. They're just bad ears. Anyway, but I also love to stand and be part of the bigger part where I see this kid run down the hall with a story to this teacher, and this kid run into that room, because I can't be it for everyone. I've certainly embraced the ones that I have, and I can think of, in my 35 years of teaching, I can think of 3 kids that I did not like, and I don't feel bad about not liking them. But beyond that, I have loved all of the students for different reasons, for different whatever, but I love being part of that bigger picture, because I can't be that for everyone, and no one can. I'm super proud of the ones that I am, but I really love being part of that bigger picture where I just stand there in the mornings and I watch it play out, and it's what it should be. It really is. Our kids are lucky. We're lucky because we've got kids who will open up to us and do those kinds of things, and will allow us to be that in their lives, because sometimes the kids are so damaged they won't let you do that either.
Already closed down before they even get to you, and so that's amazing. And again, it shows that mutual energy exchange, that there's safety within that to allow that to happen, and when they feel unconditionally loved and supported, you will see them open up. You will see them become vulnerable, which is where a lot of their gifts lie.
Yep, absolutely. So we're really lucky, because we have a lot of teachers, a lot of staff, I should say it that way, that buy into that same. You're worth listening to. Well, I've got one kid, Gavin, you know who you are when I start talking about this, whose whole focus is getting Pluto named a full planet again. And I can't tell you the times that I've had to sit and listen to him tell me about how this is why Pluto should become a full planet. And one of these days, one day this week, it was Pluto Day. Even I don't know which day it was. Anyway, I had to hear about that. And it just delights me that he still thinks there's a group of us that are really interested in getting Pluto named a full planet, not a dwarf planet again. But again, that's his niche. We try to embrace those niches. As strange as some of them may be. And he knows I tease him about this all the time. He knows. I'm sure he's not even listening, but who knows? He's on all kinds of YouTube things, so maybe he will see it.
This will go back because of him.
But those are the kinds of things that we could just go, stop talking stupid or whatever. And we don't. We try to let them bring those things to us and be part of that.
Said that a million times on here too. This work, it's so simple, it's just not easy.
Right.
It's simple to be able to stand in the hallway and say good morning and see them.
Yep.
To sit there and hear that person's story. But when you got, well, I should be here, I should be getting my class ready, I should do all this other stuff, you get away from the simple act of just being able to see them, hear them, make them feel valued, worthy of your time and energy. Like those things can be so simple, but if we bring all of our own stuff, we make it really complicated and then it gets hard.
Well, years ago, when my dad was the principal and he used to stand at the T down at the old building, one morning I said to him, because the rest of us were all in our rooms and he was the principal, so it was different than trying to get his classroom ready or whatever. I said to him, Dad, why do you do that every day? And he said, because I can judge what the whole day is going to be like.
Yeah.
And he says, and that's what I'm watching for. I'm watching for, are you coming in sad? Are you coming in, and ever since he passed away, that I've stood in that spot. I've never explained that to any of the other ones that stand there with me, but that's what I'm looking for. Am I getting a read on these three brothers that just came in and they're all acting different than they usually do? What's up with that group? And we've done that numerous times where what happened? Well, our dog got hit last night. And then you can address that. So my dad was not wrong. When you stand there in the morning, you can get a feel for what the dynamic is that's coming in, and maybe so-and-so had a new baby last night and it's that great kind of thing. Or maybe it is their dog got hit by a car last night or grandpa got put in the hospital and you greet every kid in the morning. You know that they're seen in the morning and they know that, hey, good morning, or hey, it's your birthday, and now it's my birthday. Are you going to sing? And it's going to be my birthday tomorrow and I'm not going to be here. Can you sing to me today? Or
love that.
And it's not just me. It's the group of us that stand there. But I guess I've never told anyone why I stand at the T, but that's why, because I learned that from my dad that's important.
It's reading energy. That's being able to pick up and intuitively just kind of notice
what's going on. And
absolutely. And I think we all have that ability.
Yeah.
But again, we either got disconnected from our own intuition to be able to pick up on that and trust that there's something going on there.
Yeah.
Or we're so caught up in our stuff that we're not even aware of what's going on around us.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, this was so good. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so honored that you asked me. I really am. I was so excited when I got that text. I was like, I don't know what I have to offer, but I'll come.
Oh my gosh, so much. I think you're going to come back and be like a weekly or a monthly guest. I was thinking, I want to celebrate this because I didn't want it to just be me talking and reflecting on the last year. Like, I've had both kids on there. Those are really special. I was like, wait, I'm like, so I sent you a text like, I think I got an idea. You up for it? Message back. I was like, oh God, I literally did a happy dance.
That's awesome. I'm so happy too. Now you gotta fill out those papers with all of your accomplishments from the years and frame them somewhere because you had your paper anniversary. That's really something. You need to be really proud of that.
Yeah.
There are lots of things that are tough to do and keep going within a year. That's awesome.
Yeah. I was actually recorded an episode yesterday and I was talking with a woman and it was episode 52. And she's like, when I was looking at your YouTube channel, doing her homework, she's like, this is once a week. That's a lot of work. I have no idea.
I'm going to be honest with you. I can't even keep up with them because I'm just watching as I have time.
Yeah.
And so I'm back on 5.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there. Yeah. I'll get there eventually. I watch stuff like that as well as I read, which is good. I'm a slow reader and I'm a slow watcher because if I don't hear something right, then and I try because I don't want it just on. Somebody said, listen to books on tape sometime. And I'm like, I can't because if I don't get something, I go back and reread it. Right. That's why it takes me 10 years to read a book.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I just saw a statistic this last week. It was 74% of podcasters don't make it past episode 10. I was like, yay.
5 times that.
Yeah, we did it. We did it. There was certainly, I did an entire episode of me wanting to quit, but so powered through. We did it.
That is awesome. Very awesome.
Brings me joy, and this allows little Tam to feel seen and hopefully help other people feel seen. I mean, that's the whole point of
That's really awesome. And I think you're doing what your goal is. I really do.
And I love when I get to share stories of other people helping people feel seen. And so thank you. And the staff who are doing the work to help those kids feel seen, because it literally is going to change the trajectory.
We certainly hope so. And that's why I don't feel like I need to retire. I just feel like we're still doing so many good things that.
That's when you know you're in your purpose.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how I feel even with the podcast. Like, it doesn't feel like work. It is a lot of work, but I love it. I love editing. I love creating the clips. I love sitting down and doing this. And so you know you're doing
I think
God's
so
work
too.
when you're.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, cheers to 35 years. Woohoo! That's exciting.
It is. It is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
We'll have you back, and once we get that planet named, maybe we'll have Gavin. Is it on? Yeah.
Gavin, yes. Oh, Lord. He could talk to you for an hour just about that.
Yes.
I actually can't wait to tell him I talked to him on this. He's going to be good.
Yeah. Help you out. On that note, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting me and this podcast and the guests that I've had on for this entire year. It has meant the world to me to be able to operate in my gifts and my purpose and to be able to share that with all of you. So thank you so much. And thank you, Miss Terrace, for helping me celebrate.
I was glad to do it. It was great.
We'll see you in year 2. We're going to keep going. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
That was awesome.